All right, good morning. This is Nancy Eckerly, and I'm here with our state legislators, and we are here for our first legislative breakfast is what we call it, although today it's not involving any food. But anyway, we want to thank them for being here today and thank everyone for watching this presentation. We have with us today State Senator Mark Messmer and our State Representative Shane Lindauer, and they'll be telling each one of them a little bit about what's going on at the State House in their regard, things that they are involved in, maybe some bills that they are looking to pass and some committees that they serve on. So we'll turn this over to them. They'll each have about 15 minutes or so. It's very informal today, but about 15 minutes to tell about what's going on in their area of the state legislature. And again, we thank them for being here, and I'll let them each do a little bit of a self-introduction for themselves. So I'm going to put the microphone down and pass it on.
All right. Okay, and I'm State Senator Mark Messmer, and I cover the Huntingburg and Jasper areas of Du Bois County. I've also got all of Pike, Spencer, and the north half of Gibson, south half of Knox, and the east half of Warwick counties. Some bills that I'm working on personally this session, I've got Senate Bill 1, which is our Senate priority bill for civil immunity for individuals, nonprofit groups, K through 12 education, businesses large and small, any kind of nonprofit organization, religious institution, higher education, and it will grant them immunity from civil tort liability or civil lawsuits for someone claiming they were exposed to or got COVID-19 at their organization or place of business. And it had a hearing a week ago in the Senate and at a Judiciary Committee, and nearly all the testimony was unanimously in support of the bill. One of the groups neutral on the bill was the Indiana Trial Lawyers Association, and they had some constructive ways to tighten the bill up that we took into consideration and amended the bill out of committee last week, or this week, by an 8-3 vote, and it'll go to the Senate floor next week for action. And it's an issue that when, shortly after the start of the COVID-19 emergency order by the governor, people that were in essential businesses started approaching us and approaching the governor to see if he could grant some immunity protection, for them, during the start of the COVID crisis. And after a few months, his attorneys decided they didn't have the statutory authority to include civil immunity in the emergency orders, and that we would have to address that legislatively at the federal level or the state level. So from about mid-June on, I started working on the bill and started talking to stakeholders and all of those groups that I listed at the beginning of the introduction, and people all over the state. And it was a high priority bill for pretty well everyone that I talked to and Senate leadership talked to. So that bill will be a high priority bill for us going through the General Assembly this year. Some other bills I'm working on. There's a issue with in the beer distribution business where the national distributor for Corona has gone in without cause and terminated their distribution agreements with beer wholesalers in other states. And so our laws dealing with that are very loosely written right now. It just says they can't be those beer distribution agreements can't be broken without good cause, but it doesn't say what good cause is. So that this bill works on that and defines that. And the Anheuser-Busch national organization, the Miller Coors national organization, and then all the wholesalers in the state agree with the wording that we've got put together. It does not impact microbreweries and their distribution agreements with wholesalers, so they're neutral on the bill. I've got a bill that came out of a situation in Boonville in 2014 where there was a missing person situation, and when they finally found the girl, she had drowned in her vehicle in a strip mine pit not too far from the last place she was seen in Boonville. But the parents could never get any law enforcement to do a criminal investigation. And this would just give a family in that situation the right to appeal to the state police as long as they've got good evidence to show that their asking for an investigation is justified and some mechanisms in place to make that work. But it would give people in their situation the right to have their family member's death investigated. I've got the annual IDEM, Indiana Department of Environmental Management, annual update bill, which is just usually some date changes to keep them in compliance with with federal statutes. The people that are in the broadband deployment business in rural America brought a bill to me to deal with the rates that the rural electric cooperatives charge broadband companies for what they call pole attachment fees. They said in some areas where the RECs have gone into the broadband business, they've made that pole attachment fee so prohibitively expensive that it locks everybody else out of in a competitive disadvantage, and it really mirrors what the public utilities have the ability to charge to other providers, even including even rural electrics. And not sure if that'll get a hearing yet, but it is an issue that's been brewing for a couple of years. In the craft hemp industry, we've got some cleanup language we started on that issue in 2018. Just over time, the seed commissioner and some of the folks involved with the hemp growing process have brought some things that really need to be updated and caught up to current technology. So that bill will take care of that. Senate Bill 303 would put some legal definitions in for E15, I think what we call gasohol, or most 87 octane fuel is 10% alcohol by content, and this bill would make definitions match up with federal definitions, and would allow with posting for consumers or fuel distributors to sell E15, and the people in the grain growing business and the alcohol producers like the one at GPC in Washington are heavily in support of that bill. So, but then there's always dispute with the oil companies on whether that's safe for vehicles or not. So, we'll have a good hearty debate on that in committee. Senate Bill 304. A couple years ago, we passed a bill that did not allow general contractors to pass on liability to people in lawsuits on a construction project that weren't directly involved, with the fault, and that's called indemnity agreements. And we thought we had included it to cover, public works contracts, but obviously we found out after a couple of years that it didn't. So that's just a cleanup bill to match what we did a couple of years ago. NDOT already has laws that fall under that, as do all private contracts, and this would just apply to contracts that the state writes. And the last bill that I'm authoring is the physical therapist compact bill that will allow physical therapists in other states an easy process to move here with licensure in another state, as long as the Indiana Professional Licensing Agency has confirmed that their standards for licensing are similar, to ours. And the compact language has been adopted by, I think, about 20 other states right now, and the language has to be nearly identical in all the states that pass it. So we'll try to get that bill heard and moved through this session. A few of the Senate priority bills, other than my Senate Bill 1. Senate Bill 2 would take care of the education, funding to the traditional K through 12 schools that had to shift to some degree of virtual learning this year. Our current state law says brick and mortar schools get 100% funding and virtual schools get 85% funding. But as schools have had to transition to more virtual learning, in the brick and mortar schools, the State Board of Education made a temporary emergency rule to allow them to get 100% funding for the fall semester. When they do the second count, we need to fix that statutorily, and I believe there's a similar House bill that does the same thing. But it would allow all brick and mortar schools, as long as that student was not a virtual student within that brick and mortar system before, they will be able to get 100% funding, even if they have to do a good chunk of their learning virtually. Senate Bill 3 expands the use of telehealth. During the beginning of the outbreak of COVID-19, the governor, through his executive orders, relaxed the requirements for more health occupations to use telehealth where it was appropriate. And this will take anything that was done by executive order and put it in the statute. Senate Bill 4 deals with healthcare, civil immunity, similar to what I've got in Senate Bill 1, but it's only directed at hospitals and nursing home healthcare workers. And then Senate Bill 5 allows for people to appeal an emergency order issued by a health department to the legislative body in their county, which could be, in our situation, to be the county commissioners. And it also, there is currently no mechanism for anyone to appeal an emergency order by the local health department. And if there's a enforcement action given to a person or business within that community, it allows that's the person to appeal the fine that they are assessed to that same legislative body. And if they disagree with the outcome of what happens at the legislative body, they can appeal it to a court. And currently, there's no answerability or no place for a citizen in a county, to appeal the action of a local health department, which we found out during the COVID-19 crisis. So, it just gives individuals the ability to appeal what they feel might be a heavy-handed action, and gives our citizens more a representative government, that they're going to be able to appeal their decision to somebody that's elected to office, either the commissioners or a judge. So with that, I will hand it over to Shane.
Good morning. My name is Shane Lindauer. I'm state representative for District 63. District 63 represents portions of 4 counties: Du Bois, Davies, Pike, and Martin counties, roughly from Jasper to Petersburg to Washington, and kind of goes over to Martin County and catches Shoals and Lagodi. So that's roughly the district that I represent. So I am currently on Roads and Transportation Committee, Natural Resources Committee, and I've been given the honor of the assistant majority floor leader this year, so I was excited about that. The bills that I'm carrying this year, kind of a new one, kind of a last-minute bill that I've been working with our leadership on, was House Bill 1004, one of our priority bills, which is actually a small business grant program, restart for small businesses. It allows grants. It builds off of what was implemented by the governor's office this past fall. And that's going to provide an influx of cash from the state budget. As most of you probably know, this is a budget year, and so that's actually our House Bill 1001 is our budget bill this year. So this is the year that we can provide some additional funding, and so we're looking to do so for small businesses, specifically small businesses that were hurt during the pandemic here, and there are a list of criteria. It's got to be under 100 employees, full-time employees, and they're preference given to Indiana businesses that are wholly owned by Indiana residents. So there's a list of criteria there. So we're pretty excited about that bill to hopefully help make some of the small businesses whole that were forced to close by the government this year. So that's hopefully move pretty quick. It was scheduled for a hearing this week, but unfortunately we won't be conducting business this coming week. So that was scheduled to move hopefully on Wednesday this week. But as I just said, it's now going to be put off. My second bill I had was a House Bill 1111, which was actually brought to me by one of our local commissioners, Chad Blessinger here. And this bill just got passed out of Roads and Transportation Committee this past week, so it was scheduled to continue through the process. But Chad came to me, and he had really kind of 2 concerns with the reason behind this bill. Was currently in state law, the state of Indiana was mandating that all commissioners go to what's kind of termed road school every year, and that takes away an element of local control, Chad thought, and I agreed. It also, Chad thought, was maybe not the best use of taxpayer money locally. And not road school is a good thing, but and I think Chad agreed with that too, but it just wasn't something that needed to happen every year. So what we did is we basically said, if you're a new commissioner coming in, you have to go within your first 2 years. And then after that, it's up to the local county executive body to determine who's going to go and when they're going to go. So again, we thought, a local control issue, let local officials make those decisions, and hopefully a better allocation of taxpayer money there as well. So that's what that bill does. Hopefully we'll continue to get some movement on that one. I've got House Bill 1285, which is an agency bill. It's the BMV bill. I could talk to you about it, but it would bore you to death. It's about 62 pages of most of the time those bills are technical corrections, changing definitions. We're changing, for instance, operator's license to driver's license, and that encompasses several sections or several titles of code. So it gets a lot of pages assigned to it. So there are some other changes in there that, the trick is kind of going through those bills and making sure what's in those bills, make sure there's nothing unexpected in there, so to speak. So we're still kind of working on that bill, and there's it'll definitely move because it's an agency bill. It's just a question of kind of what it looks like in its final form. So House Bill 1286 is a bill for me that I've given a lot of attention to this year. And as Senator Messmer said, there's kind of a companion bill in the Senate side. It's dealing with telehealth, and telehealth's always been an issue to me that was important, being in rural Indiana, and it would just allow increased access to health care for people in a rural part of the state. Obviously, with COVID, this really brought this issue home and kind of put it on the forefront of everybody's mind, including, it's one of the governor's priorities. As again, Senator Messmer said, it's a Senate priority. And so what this bill does is it's going to hopefully provide a uniform definition of what telehealth is. It's going to provide that currently in the state of Indiana, Medicaid, for instance, was technically supposed to allow telehealth, but they were still dictating where that was supposed to take place. So the terms are originating site and distant site. Originating site is where the patient is located, and distant site is where the practitioner, the doctor, whatever it may be, was located. And so they were still very much dictating where that could happen, which really kind of negated the ability to do telehealth effectively, or the way it was designed. So we're changing that to say that the Medicaid can't, or FSSA anyway, in the state of Indiana can't dictate that, and again providing some cohesiveness as far as the definitions of what telehealth are, who can practice telehealth. My goal, my desire here is to say in the bill that I've been working on, if you are operating within your scope of practice per the state of Indiana, you can practice telehealth. So whatever that might look like for you, if you're a physical therapist or a chiropractor who's prescribing PT or something like that, certainly you could foresee an instance where they could do that on a camera or something like that for their patient, or they could monitor the patient doing some of those things. So it really opens up a lot of exciting possibilities for people to gain access to care, and again, especially during a pandemic when people can't get out as much, to be able to do some of these things in their house. And the elderly population, or folks that are in assisted living, or more skilled care settings will maybe not have to get out as much. So that bill was also scheduled for a hearing this week, and obviously got pushed back at this point too. So the other bill, or another bill, was House Bill 1347, which this bill started looking at the governor's executive orders and trying to categorize them and look at what was really good ideas, and if they were good ideas during the pandemic, could we capture those and just codify them, basically just keep them going forward. And so as I started looking at those, they still became very healthcare centric, I guess you would say. So there's 5 or 6 pieces in there that that we were capturing the governor's executive orders going forward. There's some pharmacy stuff. It allows some pharmacists some flexibility. APRNs and physician's assistants, it's going to allow them to a little more, still operating within their scope of practice, of course, more flexibility, still working with an MD or DO, but in any case, trying to just allow a little more flexibility, again, specific to a lot of the healthcare stuff. So another big one for our area has been House Bill 1463. This has been an issue for me that's taken that's garnered a lot of attention since I've been in this office, which is DNR and IDM and how they impact specifically the farming community. It's not just the farming community, but specifically the farming community and the ability to maintain their ditches, to maintain their fields and get in and out of their fields to do what they're trying to do. So we've been trying to work with IDM and DNR to strike a better balance as far as what farmers, again, specifically farmers, because that's been most impacted in our district, what they can do without getting permission, without having to go through permits. And we've been working on streamlining the permitting process and getting IDM and DNR to unify their systems, which Senator Messmer and I have worked on that. We've actually, I think, got that done now. I've not tried it myself, the permitting process, but supposedly you can go on now and it's a unified system, so you don't have to contact IDM and DNR and jump through several hoops. Hopefully now it's a more streamlined process, also increasing the permitting time and things like that. The bill itself that I'm working on is really just, so there's been a few farmers in our area who have had levees failing, levees that have been there for decades, and were not given the ability initially to go in and repair those levees that with the levees failing, they couldn't either farm their fields in one farmer's case, or another farmer who unfortunately is still in peril, really, his business is under threat of flooding and basically ruination if the levee completely fails. So we're trying to, in that bill, all I'm trying to do is, currently the code says that discretion can be given if a person's life and property are in danger, and all I'm doing is trying to change "and" to "or." So in the one farmer's case, well, actually both farmers' cases, it was just their property really that was in danger. Like I said, the one farmer hadn't been able to farm a couple hundred acres for roughly 2 years, and the other gentleman is still kind of struggling to fight through this issue. So what changing that "and" to an "or" would hopefully give DNR a little more flexibility to allow these things to take place. It also is looking at, currently in code, DNR can walk onto your property to inspect your ditch or stream or whatever without notifying you. So if you're a farmer, you could have DNR and a DNR inspector on your field, and they didn't know that they were there. So this bill is also taking a look at that, saying that DNR, and I think quite honestly this is a good idea among all state agencies that we need to take a good hard look at. I think in our neck of the woods, if you've got hunting season and you don't know somebody's on your property, that could be a very dangerous situation for state officials and for the farmers, property owners. Also during harvest season, when you've got corn that's 7-8 feet tall, whatever it may be, and if you've got somebody walking a stream in rows of corn and you can't see. So what the bill is trying to do is say that before you go on a farmer's property, or any property, not just a farmer's property, but you have to let the property owner know that you're going to be doing so, that you're going to be performing some sort of inspection, and unless there's some sort of emergency situation going on. So there's a clause in there that still allows if there's an emergency situation. So those are my bills. I'm co-authoring a few bills as well. The House Bill 1296, I'll just highlight a few of them here, is looking at, there's been a lot of talk of, when the legislature needs to get involved, if there's, when executive orders are issued or when there's emergency type situations. So this bill is looking at that. I don't think anybody that I've talked to thinks that the governor shouldn't have some rulemaking authority, some executive order power during emergency situations. But I heard from a lot of constituents during this process that they didn't feel like their voices were being heard over the course of months. And so we're just looking at if a situation like this lasts over a certain amount of time, and those are all things we're still working on. There's several bills like this in the legislature. There's 4 or 5 bills for sure, I think, on the House and the Senate that are looking at this, and all of them are kind of a variation of this. But they just think that we need to have some sort of trigger if an emergency lasts for whatever it is, 30, 60, 90 days, that the legislature needs to be called back in and consulted, and then we can we as legislators can provide some input from what we're hearing from our constituency, which was something I think generated a lot of frustration. This isn't an indictment on the current governor or past governors. It's just saying that our system of government was set up to be a balance of powers, and so this is trying to kind of bring some of that back in line, I think, is the way I looked at it. So another bill, House Bill 1370, that I just signed up to co-author here, is looking at free speech on college campuses. And basically going to, if you're a state institution that's taking money, not allowing you to censor students' political speech and things like that. So that's authored by Representative Jack Jordan. And that one's I think was also scheduled to be heard this week, and so that one's one that I'm particularly excited about. I'm still kind of getting up to speed on that one, but that's one as well. So with that, I think that's all for now. There's some others I've co-authored, but I'll leave it at that for now. So thank you.
All right. As you can tell, our state legislature is very busy. Our state legislators are even more busy trying to sort through everything and make sure that during the budget year, which adds another component, is that everything gets covered and everything gets handled. And yet they still want to hear from the local citizens. So if you want to get a hold of your state legislators, please contact the Jasper Chamber and we can give you the information on how to get a hold of your state legislators. So with that, we will close this session this morning, and I thank you all for watching. And I really want to thank Mark Messmer for being here and Shane Lindauer for being here and taking their time to share with you everything that's going on in their realm. So thank you very much.